sense, she was a representative of the stable state, let's call it that, very much in favour of holding the Russians to account. It'll be fascinating to see next month, because the State Department comes to quite a moment on possible sanctions over the Salisbury nerve agent attack as to whether to impose further sanctions on Russia. It's an open question. We'll see. I mean, we'll see how tough the US wants to go on that issue. But overall, clearly there's a question mark over the willingness of countries to endanger key relationships in pursuit of a particular point. And I think the common theme across the issues you've raised in this segment is, with a good or important relationship, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Turkey, how far do people want to endanger the wider relationship in pursuit of justice and accountability when there's some flagrant rule breaking?
So I'm just staggered, actually. I couldn't believe it when I read all those things out. I mean, that's just a few of some of the things that have happened by a government on another government's sovereign territory. Why do you think this is happening at this point now?
Well, with any of these things, you've got to ask, what's the or else? If, for example, the UK were to ask for those two Russian suspects, now believed GRU officers who were said to have gone to Salisbury to do this poison to be extradited, and Russia refused, as it did in the case of Alexander Litvinenko in 2006, what is the UK's position at that point? Is it going to try and threaten further sanctions? What other action can they take? It's quite limited. And that presumably was one of the factors playing in the minds of the people who okayed that operation, is that ultimately you've got to be willing to go really hard on this. And most countries are not prepared literally to risk war and peace over this type of incident.
Again, so many of them have put sanctions on, but I do take your point that these are, to be evaluated every so often. Regarding the case of Jamal Khashoggi, who's a colleague, who's a journalist, who used to be very close to the Saudi royal family, worked for the government in embassies around the world, as well as being a journalist, but recently has been a critic of what he considered heavy-handed tactics and the crackdowns under the new Crown Prince. Obviously, Saudi Arabia denies any involvement of India's disappearance. What do you think? I mean, the United States is very close to the Saudi regime right now. Do they fear being held to account? How do you analyze that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the recent row with Canada over criticism of the Saudi human rights record, they don't appear to be. They appear to be ready to take quite tough and uncompromising positions. Although, of course, on this one, they're denying that they disappeared Mr. Khashoggi. But it is interesting. I mean, there are different ways of holding people to account. And in this case, of course, President Erdogan of Turkey is really putting the pressure on the Saudis. And, of course, as it happened on his territory, albeit in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, he's in a position, I think, to put some pressure on.
And it's actually really, really unclear what has happened, because the clear fact is that he went in and his fiancée has not seen him come out. She actually has spoken to the Washington Post. She said, I hope we'll soon learn what happened to him. I still have hope that he is alive, but I need to know, where is Jamal? I have to know what's happened to him. And after all sorts of leaks and allegations that he may have been murdered inside, even dismembered, people close to him are now thinking perhaps he was maybe sedated and taken back to Saudi Arabia. Something other than his death may have happened. We still wait to see, and of course, as I say, the Saudis still deny it. Let's just get back to your investigations and the investigation into the Skripal case. You, as sort of a kind of a context for this, because Jamal had said he was worried. He was worried because he was outspoken critic. He was worried about what might happen to him. You talked to Sergei Skripal, who was poisoned. What was his concern? He was living here in the UK.
Absolutely. I spoke to him in his home in Salisbury last summer. I haven't spoken to him since the Boston attack. But Sergei Skripal at that point, he did express concerns. He put it largely in terms of his son, who sadly since died, and his daughter, who were travelling back and forth to Russia quite frequently. And he said to me, look, I don't want to become a big public figure in all this. We are afraid of Putin. So he did express concerns, particularly about becoming a public quoting figure.
So you've heard what the investigative website Bellingcat has said, that it believes that the second suspect in the Novichok case is actually a doctor recruited by the GRU to carry out this attack, along with the other person who was identified, a few weeks ago. Where do you come down on this? What do you think about identifying these two? How significant is this potential
amazing amount has happened since then. I mean, I thought, really? Is someone really going to come forward and name these people? And lo and behold, today, we have reporters going to Mishkin's village up near the Arctic Circle in Archangel district of Russia, interviewing villagers who knew him, talking about what he did when he was a kid, how he joined the military, even alleging that Putin personally presented him with the Hero of the Russian Federation medal. Now think about that, because back a few weeks ago, President Putin was saying these people are spies. So that's extraordinary, the way that this whole naming of these people has just gained its own momentum as a story. And remember, an awful lot of this Spain work that's being done is being done by independent Russian journalists.
Yeah, and President Putin, because he's been quoted about this, has called Sergei Skripal scum. He said he believes this will all blow over soon, and it's only the media that is fanning the flames on this. That is nothing, that he had nothing to do with it, but nonetheless, he's scum. So you have been, obviously digging into this. What is the mindset? What do you think was Putin's beef with the Skripals?
Well, when I was writing my book, obviously one of the key things that came back again and again as a question, and talked to people who've been dealing with all the aspects of the incident since it happened, was why. And a lot of people struggle with this question. So you've got to look at it in the context of the long-term campaign against traitors. But actually, the people who actually spy for the major Western agencies, the CIA, MI6, there aren't that many of them. There aren't that many people to be made examples of. When you then try to deal with the practical problems about how they're going to reach out and take someone like that and take away their life, the ones in the US in particular are pretty well protected. Sergei Skripal, because he'd been in jail for a while, he had a presidential pardon. He didn't consider himself a high threat. He was living under his own name in Salisbury, and that just made him more approachable. If you like, it was a compromise between the aspiration in terms of him hitting back at great traitors and the availability. Who was actually available to be made an example of?
And I mean, Skripal did give information to MI6, the British intelligence agency. He doesn't call himself, he still calls himself a nationalist and a patriot. Jamal Khashoggi calls himself a patriot. He never called himself a dissident. He just felt he was doing his patriotic duty and raising warning signals. What do you think, given the publicity around this now, that's going on inside the Kremlin, in Putin's mind? I mean, must he be thinking that this is all sort of crumbling around him, or do you think he's still sort of, feeling that the long arm of his, whatever, I don't want to say revenge or anything like that, but the long arm of his reach is still very potent?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting one because, if he was, or whoever did this, or planned this, the senior ranks, the GRU, were trying to send a message, you could argue it's still being sent, that if you think you can spy for a Western agency and go and make a new life in the West, we can find you and we can make you pay. And that remains the fact. Sergei Skripal and his daughter might have survived, and they've been through a pretty terrible time. On the other hand, I think, look, if that's the aim of it, what you really don't want to do is turn the GRU as one of your central intelligence and covert action agencies into an international laughingstock. And with the appearance of the two men on RT, that's what's happened.
Really fascinating. Mark Urban, thank you so much indeed for joining us. So, as politics in the United States continues to feel increasingly tribal and divisive, many are turning to the past to look for answers. In her new book, These Truths, A History of the United States, author Jill Lepore explores how American history has influenced some of the most polarizing issues in politics today, such as race, women's rights, and hyperpartisanship. Our Walter Isaacson sits down to see what it would take to redress this gaping wound and possibly rescue a democracy in distress.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
And on the bestseller list with a sprawling, wonderful narrative history of the United States. And your theme is in your title, These Truths, from one of the greatest sentences ever written, the sentence in the Declaration. What are these truths?
Well, these truths in the Declaration of Independence that are self-evident, political equality, popular sovereignty, and natural rights. And this is a nation that is founded on an idea, those particular three ideas. And unlike other countries that are founded on common ancestry or common heritage or the chain of leaders, this is a nation that is founded on those ideas. And so the way the book works is to try to figure out where those ideas come from. They have a particular history, and then to ask
I love the Declaration of the Constitution. But as you point out in your book, it's Madison, you also do Billy, his slave, George Washington, you do Henry. You weave the slaves in with the people writing.
Ooh, I gotta find that book. I gotta find that book.
So one of the things I want to call the reader's attention to is the asymmetry of the historical record. We know so much about Madison. He's endlessly fascinating. We know a lot less about the people that he owned as chattel, as property. And yet, we are descended from both of those people, from all of those people. And to have to sort of struggle for racial equality and political equality in our day means having a richer history, a fuller history. So, and a more integrated history, right? So people sort of would study presidential history or political history, maybe also study the history of slavery, emancipation, and Jim Crow and civil rights, as if those are kind of separate tales. You know, you could tell them in separate books, but they're, you know, in our own day, these things, you know, Black Lives Matter and Obama's presidency and Trump's presidency are all part of the same world. So how to restore that sense?
I just found my next book to read. It's called These Truths, The History of the United States by Jill Lepore.
Then I made it, again, giving it a shot, trying to lay out a story that holds together.
And you also weave in women that way. We share a common interest in Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
With your sister Jane, right? And tell me how that story wove in and you brought women into the narrative.
Yeah, what I'm trying to, like with the history of race, there's this sort of segregated history in our textbooks. With women, they really remain pretty much left out of any account of political history. Women tend to sort of appear in 1848 and kind of curtsy and say we would like our rights, and then they come back in 1920 and get the right to vote, and then they appear sort of, you know, protesting America, the Beauty Pageant or whatever, Miss America in 1968. And that's kind of it, and it makes no sense. It doesn't explain the world we live in now, where artisanship and struggles for women's equality before the law are explosively in confrontation with one another in our history world. So I started out wanting to be a historian because I wanted to write women's history. And I ended up writing political history, but trying to write political history that took women seriously as political actors. One way I tried
You
to
can
do that
never
was
take one apart from the other, man. Both of them just go hand in hand.
But also just thinking about all the decades when women didn't have the right to vote, and yet influenced American politics. Outside of electoral politics grew the work of moral suasion and the moral crusade, which becomes just a key feature of the American political style, the moral crusade. It's really brought into politics by women who were viewed as abolitionists. It's fueled by the Second Great Awakening, the evangelical Christianity, working for women's rights, working for temperance, later for prohibition. In the 20th century, women's moral crusades have generally moved to the right. McCarthyism can really be understood as a moral crusade, really run by women. Pro-life movement, of course, is a moral crusade. You could think of the Me Too movement as a moral crusade, too. Women have really consistently been denied equal political power, and the way that women have tended to try to influence politics has generally taken other forms that have big consequences for how our republic works.
You talked about how the women's involvement in politics has often been a very conservative thing. In fact, you highlight Phyllis Schlafly, one of the women who was part of the original, I guess, 70s and 80s, 1970s, 80s, 90s, the New Right movement against abortion and other things. Do you feel that in some ways women's involvement, as you said, is a conservative force as well as liberal?
It absolutely is both. I mean, the women were really involved in the populist movement in the 19th century that is a left movement, but also is a nativist movement. It has both what we would term liberal and conservative dimensions. So those labels would have been applied at the time. Prohibition is essentially a conservative movement. Schlafly is a good stand-in for how conservative women have aligned over the course of the 20th century. She enters politics in the 1950s as a McCarthy supporter. She's a huge and really influential supporter of Barry Goldwater in 1964, and even before. And then she turns her attention to stopping the ERA after it passes Congress and goes to the stage of ratification in 1972, in part by conflating equal rights with abortion. And she's just clear. The last dying act of Phyllis Schlafly was to endorse Donald Trump in 2016. She went to the Republican nominating convention in Cleveland.
does help. It does help to explain a lot of those things, yes. These white women have ruined the lives of, yeah.
Is your book, do you consider it ideological at all in your approach to American history, meaning coming from a liberal side or coming from a conservative side?
So I was actually trying to reject the highly ideological interpretations of American history that we have been kind of stuck with. On the one hand, we have a sort of polarized past. People kind of line up their, less scholars don't do this, politicians do this. They offer, there's a kind of conservative version of American history, and then there's a liberal version of American history. With this book, I would like to elicit a conversation about whether we can have a shared past, because I don't know how these partisan divisions that make it impossible for us to formulate a budget, to complete a full Supreme Court, to pass pretty much any legislation, and I think most importantly to think deeply about the need for political reform. We have a lot of conversation in our country about resistance and revolution, and I think there's so much wrong structurally that we really ought to be having reform conversations as well. And that's the spirit of
We gotta get rid of those Republicans in Congress first, man. That's where we gotta stop.
Dilute something or be wishy-washy about things, but to just take seriously that this is a set of things that did happen, and here's my interpretation of them.
All of this seems to culminate, both the strands of women rights on the liberal and progressive side, and as you point out so well in the book on the conservative side, in the Kavanaugh hearings and the Me Too movement that we're going through. How do you react to that? How do you see the history leading us to that? Where will it go?
Yeah, I think that's the intersection of two different developments. One is the changing relationship between the public and the Supreme Court, largely through the nomination process, but and the other is women's struggle to gain equal protection of the law. And I think we think about that more squarely when we look at that, those confrontations. We're thinking about, well, wow, if all the violence against women and sexual harassment laws and sexual assault laws that have been passed in the 1970s had been enforced, we wouldn't be here now. We're here because that didn't succeed. And women don't have equal rights and they don't have equal protection. I think that's the visible piece of what's going on now, separate from the partisan piece of it. But the Supreme Court public opinion is a thing that actually kind of distracts me and captures my attention here, because throughout the 19th century, generally, when a president named a new justice, the decision just went to the whole of the Senate, which just voted up or down, and they almost always voted up. It didn't even really go to committee. When it started going to committee, the committee maybe had a few deliberations and they voted up or down and sent it to the Senate. The first justice nominee to appear before the Senate was in 1925. Like the idea that people are supposed to go and be interrogated before the Senate Judiciary Committee, that's a very recent development in our history. And that was just a weird kind of one-off until 1939 when Felix Frankfurter was called to answer the charge that he was a communist. And he agreed to go. And the only reason he was asked was because Hugo Black in 1939 had been nominated by FDR. After he got through the Senate, it was revealed that he had been in the KKK. And the Senate thought, whoa, we should have brought him before the committee and asked him about that. So it's not until 1955 that it's even regular that nominees appear. And since 1987...
So if it does come out now, prove that Mark Davis comes out and say, yes, Kavanaugh did force himself on Christian Ford. Can we remove him from the Supreme Court? Can we?
The American people will decide our next justice. That's actually not how it's set up. It's not it's not an elected position. It's an appointment for life. It's meant to be insulated from public opinion. So I think it's quite troubling to imagine that Twitter is deciding who will hold the next seat on the Supreme Court.
One of the themes of your work, and Einstein,
Because Twitter user become president.
Gyroscope, just when it's tipping one way, it knows how to right itself. Do you think we have in our history, in our DNA, and going forward, the mechanism?
Yo, Kendrick, thanks for making that song DNA, yo. I'm not saying that word wasn't in the vernacular, but everybody uses it now to describe what's in people's DNA or the conscious DNA.
I think a lot about the speech that Frederick Douglass gave in 1894, shortly before his death, to an audience of school children in Manassas, Virginia, Black School Children. And think about everything that he had achieved abolition, emancipation, and equal rights. And by 1894, right, the Civil War has been one, emancipation, that's what Jim Crow has taken over. The South wins the peace. There's violent segregation and an epidemic of lynching. And he tells these school children to hope that what is necessary in challenging times, and the more challenging the times are, is to do the hard work of figuring out where hope lies.
Children's War, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And in these bitter times, it is always instructive to know how Americans were able to overcome historic divisions in the past. And in the aftermath of today's resignations by the UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, please join me tomorrow for my exclusive interview with James Melville. He is the respected U.S. Ambassador to Estonia, who resigned his post because he feels he can no longer defend America's foreign policy. But for now, that's it for our program tonight. Thanks for watching Amanpour & Company on PBS, and join us again tomorrow night.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I gotta get ready to. I gotta be at work in about 6 hours, so I got time to do like 3 hours of this. Speaking of Frederick Douglass's speech, the 6th reference, I just found it, and it is on This Cruel War, THISCRUELWAR.com. And it says, This Cruel War, an evidence-based exploration of the causes and ramifications of the American Civil War. Frederick Douglass's Decoration Day speech, 1894. Friends and fellow citizens, if anything like pride or self-gratulation were permissible or pardonable in any man on any occasion like this, I might be excused for entertaining some such feeling in view of the invitation to appear here as your orator today. In your estimation and mine, and in the estimation of loyal men generally, especially the loyal North, the annual memorial occasion has a deep and sacred significance. They stand as a sign of something real, valuable, and important. He who is deemed worthy to participate in them, he be ever so humble and his part ever so limited, may well enough feel himself exalted. It is more than ribbons or stars or garters. It makes a man as one of the American people, a man among men, a full partaker of the rights, duties, privileges, and immunities of American citizenship. A citizenship having a grander future than that of any other country in the world. Man, he said this in 1894. Wow. Was he 124 years? Okay, 124 years. While the prominent position you have assigned me today confers higher honor and greater distinction than any promise by the circumstances of my earlier life, and while I consented to come here only after a severe controversy with my distrust and my sense of my inability to bring forward anything outside the beaten track of memorial addresses, and while I gather up in due form the noble sentiment, thoughts, and aspirations suggested by this memorial anniversary, and to give them appropriate voice and expression, is a task to which men far abler than myself might feel unequal. I am nevertheless, for many reasons, very glad to be here and to bear the honorable part to which you have been pleased to call me. Fellow citizens, I congratulate myself and I congratulate you upon the fact that amid all the prosperity and glory in which you stand, and notwithstanding all the changes wrought in the externals of your city, I find here in Rochester today the same enlightened, liberal, and independent spirit by which it was distinguished 40 years ago. Yo, this is a cool ass website, yo. They got some awesome ass link and pictures and information out here. Mm. While indulging in reminiscences and while I am perhaps speaking to many of a new generation, I may say that the best 25 years of my life were spent in Rochester. Friendships were formed during their residence among you, which even the iron hand of time cannot break. Common pleasures have their union, and there are strong but uncommon pains and suffering have but common pains and suffering have bonds of fellowship even stronger and more lasting. Those that bind me here are of the latter class. I was with you and suffered with you in the hour of danger and profound anxiety, and the common suffering has made us friends. I was with you when a great national affliction and the stern logic of events made, made your cause mine, and mine yours, and it was here that for the first time I had the happiness to feel myself under the protection of the national flag. Fellow citizens, though I have not in the past participated with you personally upon occasions like this, my peculiar experience together with that common interest and common memory which makes this day sacred to us all, have united me in spirit with you on all memorial occasions. No people in the United States, so far as I know, perform the rites and ceremonies which belong to this day more scrupulously, appropriately, and impressively than do the people of Rochester. And from my recollection of your experience with the clouds, darkness, and blood attending the war, when gloom filled your homes and sorrow sat at your hearthstone, no people have better reason to perform these rites and ceremonies than have you, the people of Rochester. The patriotism honors this day honors found not its birth but its expression in their momentous struggle. It was seen that the accumulation of wealth and the ease and luxury such accumulation brought had not destroyed the heroic spirits of the days that tried men's souls. I see even now to hear and feel the effects of the sights and sounds of that dreadful period. I see the flags from the windows and housetops fluttering in the breeze. I see and hear the steady tramp of armed men in blue uniforms through all your streets. I see the recruiting sergeants with drum and fife, with banner and badge, calling for men, young men and strong, to go to the front and fill up the gaps made by rebel powder and pestilence. I hear the piercing sound of trumpets that told us plainly that peace had taken its flight from our borders, that our country was divided and involved in the tumults of a terrible war. What Rochester was at the beginning of that war, that Rochester was during the war. And at the end of the war, as an eyewitness, I am here to say that, though there are croakers here as anywhere else, where during all that momentous struggle, the courage of Rochester never quailed. Her mind never doubted, her enthusiasm never cooled, her pulse never closed, her arm never wearied. The fact to which we today invite the attention of loyal patriotic men in every part of our common country is that we are still upon duty and that we have not forgot our patriot dead. We call attention to the fact that within the sacred enclosure of Mount Hope, a place well named and well suited to the solemn purpose of what it is to which it is devoted, a ground hallowed by affection, adorned by art, beautified by wealth, skill, and industry, coupled with the holiest memories, where strong men go to meditate and widows and orphans go to weep. We have met to strewn flowers with lavish, loving, loyal hands upon the green graves of our young men who in the hour of natural peril went forth and nobly gave their lives, all that men can give to save this country from dismemberment and ruin. Does any man question the rights or propriety of this annual ceremony? Can any man who loves his country advise its discontinuance? Is there anywhere another altar? Is there anywhere another altar better than this, around which the nation can meet each year to renew its national vows and manifest its loyal devotion to the principles of our free government? Is there any eminence from which we can better survey the past, the present, and the future? For my part, I know of no other such day. There is none other so abundant in suggestions and themes of immediate national interest as this day. In saying this, I am not aware that the world is full of anachronisms, empty forms and superstitions, kept above ground and upon exhibition by hollow, heartless, unthinking custom. Things that wear the appearance of life while destitute of its power, and which have little or no relation the generations now living. I am not unaware of these facts, but I'm also aware that the time may come when this National Decoration Day, which means so much to us, shall share the fate of other great days. Having answered the end of its ordination, it will fade and vanish, and it will be given to some other day more nearly allied with the wants and events of another age. So let it be. Everything is beautiful in its season. Let not the smoke survive the candle. That's a good line. Let not the smoke survive the candle. What could that mean? Let not the smoke survive the candle. Let not the smoke survive the candle. When an institution has answered the end for which it was created, it should follow the order of nature and disappear. Here, as elsewhere, there is no pause, no stopping place. There have been many plans and policies proposed in the interest of what is called conversation. But the combined wisdom of all the ages has not yet devised any means to guard and guarantee the world against mutation in human society or revolutions in human government. The law of change is everywhere vindicated. What has happened once may happen again. Sufficient unto the day is the evil, therefore, and we may console ourselves in the thought that whatever may the immediate or distant future, whatever may hallow another day and make it great in the eyes of the American people, for the present at least, there is no national holiday which contains so much for the head and heart of our day and generation as does this Decoration Day. We may say of it, as Daniel Webster once said of Bunker Hill Monument, it looks, it speaks, it acts. It recalls to use the emphasis of the roar of 1,000 cannon, the scenes and incidents of a tremendous war. It is full of lessons of wisdom, courage, and patriotism. It may, as I have said, lose its hold on the attention of the people and cease to be observed, but the broad and manly sentiment of which it is born and by which it is sustained will live, flourish, and bear similar fruits forever. Which good and evil, loyalty and treason, liberty and slavery, remain opposite and irreconcilable, and shall contend as they must contend. For ascendancy in the world, their respective forces will adopt opposite emblems and tokens. Fellow citizens, two very conflicting sentiments and policies have been expressed and espoused in respect to our duty toward the people lately in rebellion. One of those will treat and regard the Southern people precisely as they would regard and treat them had they been always loyal and true to the government. It is said that this cruel war is over and the rebels have repented their folly and have accepted in good faith the results of the war, and that now we should forget and forgive the past and turn our attention entirely to the future. Even that moral and intellectual giant in the councils of the nation, the late Charles Sumner, would have had all our battle flags banished from view and nothing left to tell that there had ever been trouble in our national family. Much in the same line with the sentiments of the late Horace Greeley, Gerrit Smith, Chief Justice Chase, and those eminent men. Opposed to this view of our national duty, it is held that the rebellion is suppressed but not conquered, that its spirit is still abroad and only waits the chance to reassert itself in acts of flagrant disloyalty. Though the doctrine of forgiveness and forgetfulness have been adopted by many of the noblest and most intelligent men of the country, men for whole, I have the highest respect, I am wholly unable to accept it to the extent to which it is asserted. I certainly cannot accept it to the extent of abandoning the observance of Decoration Day. If rebellion was strong and loyalty was right, if slavery was wrong and emancipation was right, we are rightfully here today. We are not here, however, to fan the flames of sectional animosity or to revive the malign sentiments which naturally sprang up in the wrath and fire of a bloody conflict. We are not here to remember the causes, the incidents, and the results of the late rebellion. We come around this national altar one day in each year to pay our grateful homage to the memory of brave men, to express and emphasize by speech and pageantry our reverence for the great qualities of enlightened and exalted human nature, which in every land are the stay and salvation of the race. The qualities without which the states will perish, society dissolves, progress becomes impossible, and mankind sinks back into hallowing wilderness of barbarism. Yeah, Frederick. They went and did it. Alright, so I just woke up, man, and as much as I want to finish reading that, you can go finish that yourself. I can finish reading that later. I got books to read on. I got books to read on, yeah. I got books to read on, yeah. Hold on real quick. Cool. Let me go ahead and get back to my boy John McCain real quick. Where did I stop last time? Mitt Romney jumped on this instantly. Mitt Romney jumped on this instantly, grabbing the opportunity to portray me as unsympathetic, to dislocated workers and underscore his credentials as a successful businessman who specialized in turning around failing companies. In addition to having been governor of Michigan, Mitt's father, George, had been president of American Motors. I've got the automobile industry in my veins, Mitt reminded voters, promising to turn Washington inside out to turn Michigan's economy around. That sound like anybody I know from 2016? And accusing me of undue pessimism. It was a smart play. It emphasized his connection to the state and offered voters their most potent of political appeals, hope. I had offered grim reality, which made a negative impression on Michigan voters that overshadowed the policies I proposed to improve it. Mitt won the Michigan primary. It wasn't close, 39% to 30%. I had missed the opportunity to land a knockout. I had missed the chance to land a knockout blow on my most dangerous opponents. Good thing for me, Mitt had effectively abandoned South Carolina. A win there could offset the damage that losing Michigan had done and give me back the advantage going into Florida. I had to beat Mike Huckabee, who was gaining ground in South Carolina with his strength in the upstate evangelical communities. But Mitt's absence in South Carolina wasn't my only piece of good luck. Ooh, speaking of evangelicals, right? Oh, what the hell happened to this download? What the hell happened to this download? Where did this download go? Where did this download go? Where did this download go? Where is this thing at? Okay. I had to be my Huckabee who was gaining ground in South Carolina with his strength in the upstate evangelical communities. But Mitt's absence in South Carolina wasn't my only piece of good luck. Fred Thompson had decided to stay in the race after losing the first three major contests. He was popular with the base, and he and Huckabee divided voters who were unlikely to support me. My strength was in South Carolina's low country, from Myrtle Beach to Charleston to Hilton Head, where social conservatives aren't as prominent as they are upstate. But I had found out in 2000 that I couldn't win the primary with low country voters alone if one opponent won everywhere else. Let me see if I can find this. Let me see if I can find this. See if I can find this damn thing. See if I can find this thing. See if I can find this thing. See if I can find this thing. Before I go deep into John McCain's Restless Wave, Charleston, South Carolina, right? Speaking of Charleston, let's see here. Speaking of Charleston, South Carolina, right? This was an awesome ass piece that I saw. And it was published on June the 19th of 2018, and it was on our CNN.com. It was published by Jessica Campisi and Syed Ahmed. It says Charleston, where 40% of all U.S. slaves entered the country, finally apologizes for its role in the slave trade. A mile from where ships dropped shackled Africans off by the thousands and inside a city hall built by forced labor, council members gathered Tuesday to finally apologize for Charleston's role in the slave trade. For the South Carolina city, the apology has been in the works for a long time. The city council picked Tuesday to approve the resolution because it's Juneteenth, a day that celebrates the abolition of slavery. The vestiges of slavery still plagues us today. You can say that again. Councilman William Dudley Gregory told CNN affiliate WCBD. He brought the bipartisan resolution to the council. Either way, up and down, it will show the world. It will give the world a barometer of where we stand as a city in the 21st century as it relates to racial reconciliation, he said. The two-page resolution is not just an apology, it's also an acknowledgement that slavery brutalized a people and stripped them of their culture and values. The institution of slavery did not just involve physical confinement and mistreatment. It says it also sought to suppress, if not destroy, the cultural, religious, and social values of Africans by stripping Africans of their ancestral names and customs, humiliating and brutalizing them through sexual exploitation, and selling African relatives apart from one another without regard to the connection of family, a human condition universal among all people of the world. Slavery's role in Charleston's history. Slavery riddles the history of the South Carolina city. 40% of Africans forcibly brought to the U.S. set foot on American soil here. In fact, some 80% of African Americans can trace their roots back to Charleston, says the International African American Museum. About a mile away from City Hall is Garstin's Wharf, where slave ships docked and unloaded at least 100,000 slaves. In 2020, this site will become the home of the International African American Museum. Oh, well, I'm gonna visit that. I might have a reason to visit a conservative state. A Confederate state. Ooh, okay. The city hall was built by slaves. Next to the city jail sat the sugar house, a euphemism for what was in effect a torture chamber. And as the resolution says, slave labor was fundamental to the economy of colonial and antebellum Charleston, not just Charleston. Decades after desegregation and the end of the Jim Crow era, Charleston's racist past simmers. It's one of the many places in the U.S. grappling with whether to remove nods to the Confederacy. A statue of John C. Calhoun, a staunch defender of slavery and secession, still stands in the city square. After and 3 years ago, a confessed white supremacist went on a shooting spree inside the city's Emmanuel AME church, killing 9 black parishioners. Earlier Tuesday, Councilman Keith Warren, an African American, said the resolution in its current state has no substance and he wouldn't vote for it. It wasn't immediately known how he voted that night. If we vote for it today, how are we going to be better off tomorrow or the next day? Warren told CNN. Without a substantive change in policy, the proposal is hollow. But along with the apology, the resolution calls on the city to promote equality in city businesses, to memorialize African Americans' graves, and to create an office of racial reconciliation. For that, says Charleston's NCAA president Dot Scott, the apology is worth backing. Regardless of where it came from, she told CNN, it sends a message. I'm sorry, I remember I had that, so I just had to go into that real quick. The Associated Press had called the race earlier in the evening when the exit polls and early results were indicating a 5 or 6 points McCain win. But the wire service had to retract the projection a short while later when the count unexpectedly tightened, my stomach with it. The next couple of hours were agonizing. I wanted badly to win South Carolina, not just for the advantage it would give me in upcoming states, but because South Carolina had been a bitter defeat in 2000. I had something to prove to myself, if no one else. As it turned out, Fred won enough votes to dilute Huckabee's strength, and I did better than expected in the upstate, even winning Greenville, where I'd been clobbered eight years before. Still, it was a narrow victory, only 3 points, and Huckabee did well enough to be encouraged. He would win quite a few more primaries and caucuses, mostly in the South. Duh. Now you see why when people be trying to act like Sarah Huckabee Sanders is now racist. She comes from a racist background. How the fuck can she not be racist? And she's working for a racist leader. So get the fuck. He will win quite a few more primaries and caucuses, mostly in the South, before it was over. But I was the recognized front runner going into Florida, which was setting up to be the decisive contest. Rudy Giuliani had bet everything on the state. Good old Rudy. He had mostly avoided Iowa because his positions on abortion and other issues made him unacceptable to social conservatives. He hadn't campaigned much in New Hampshire either, which I thought was a mistake on his part that redounded to my benefit. He's the kind of candidate who appeals to New Hampshire Republicans and independents, outspoken, authentic, and confrontational. He chose to save his resources for a last-stand fight in Florida, where quite a few retired New Yorkers reside. But by then, the press narrative was firmly fixed and voters were only hearing about a 3-person race: McCain, Romney, and Huckabee. I don't think a lot of Floridians even knew Rudy was still running. He and I were friends, and in the days between the South Carolina primary and the Floridas, as Rudy sensed his gambit had failed, we stayed on good terms, even hinting that he his organization and endorsement to support me in the primaries that followed. Mitch had a good organization in Florida and was managing to keep the debate focused on economic issues rather than national security, where I was stronger. He reminded voters He reminded voters that in another burst of straight talk I had publicly acknowledged I knew less about the economy than national security. He assured them that he could do both jobs competently. He hadn't finished taking advantage of my Michigan jobs remark either. I was also on the receiving end of daily attacks from talk radio blowhards. They had some effect, but they aren't as influential as they like their listeners to believe. They make quite a living from promoting polarization in the country and scaring politicians who can only win races in gerrymandered districts. I told ya, yo, if these white racists don't involve themselves in tricks and shit to try to suppress the vote, there will not be a Republican congressman or senator in this country, yo. Word of my mother. Their ideas are done. They lost the Civil War. The motherfuckers are still holding on to that ideal of whites here, blacks here. Like, get the fuck out of here, yo. Look at that. They make quite a living from promoting polarization in the country and scaring politicians who could only win races in gerrymandered districts. They cannot win a fair fight. Essentially, they can't. I'm just saying, man. And when they're in high dungeon, they can be amusing in over-the-top vaudevillian kind of way. They had been after me episodically for years, pounding my positions on campaign finance reform and immigration and other apostasies. I had learned to laugh it off. They could tie up our front office phones for an hour or so by extorting their listeners to give the Trader McCain a piece of their mind. But they had a negligible impact on my national popularity. In Florida, their antipathy towards me was friendly. Even Mitt, the moderate former governor of Massachusetts, whom they would disparage 4 years later, was an acceptable alternative as long as I was in the race. We feared that as long as Mitt stuck with his disciplined message on the economy and emphasized his business skills, the race would stay too close for comfort. Our last debate just 5 days before the primary had focused on economic policy, and Mitt was far outspending us on television and radio ads. I needed to change the subject. Our research guys dug up a quote by Mitt about Iraq, which interpreted very literally could be portrayed as advocating a schedule for withdrawing our troops based on dates rather than conditions on the ground. I accused him of wanting to cut and run before victory was achieved. It was a stretch according to the fact checkers, and I caught flack for it. I don't mind we took any more liberties with the quote that Mitt had taken with my jobs remark on my immigration views. But the attack angered him and he wouldn't let it go for 3 days, which played to my advantage since it kept the debate focused on Iraq and not the economy. I knew from personal experience how he felt. I'd gotten angry over attacks in South Carolina 8 years before, and strayed from my reform message to air my grievances. Mitt called our tactics in Florida Nixonian, but he kept talking about them, which is probably a reaction that would have pleased Richard Nixon. He had a point though, and as I said, getting pissed off by an opponent's attack is something I could relate to emphatically. But the comeback phase of my campaign was over. I had made my point about the surge and proved that I was resilient. Now I was running to win the thing. An endorsement by Charlie Crist, Florida's Republican governor, the night before the primary gave us a last burst of speed across the finish line. According to Rudy, Chris had promised his endorsement to him. Mitt thought he had received encouragement too. Rudy was angered by the betrayal but not at me. He knew his candidacy was finished. That night he and I talked on the phone and our staffs confirmed about working together after Florida. I won the Florida primary by a little more than I thought we would, 5 points. And with all that, and with it, all 57 of its delegates. Mitch wasn't going anywhere yet, but I would be hard to stop now. Super Tuesday, with its 21 primaries and caucuses in California, the biggest prize, was a week away. Rudy endorsed me the day after the Florida primary and helped us get his support. Yo, I haven't heard this song in so long, yo. When they see me, believe me. Gotta learn to take it easy. Super Tuesday, with its 21 primaries and caucuses in California, the biggest prize, was a week away. Rudy endorsed me the day after the Florida primary and helped us get his supporter, Texas Governor Rick Perry's endorsement the same day that California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger endorsed me, giving our campaign the appearance of the train to ride as he was leaving the station. We had a debate that night at the Reagan Library with Nancy Reagan in attendance. All